Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Reliability BoomBox, proudly brought to you by Reliability Extranet Group of Companies. Welcome back, Seven. Always good to have you alongside.
Thank you very much, sir.
So, last time we caught up, we started talking about the 5 habits of extraordinary reliability engineer.
Yes.
And we decided that we'd do a quick little synopsis of the book and sort of chew the fat around each chapter. So last week we did a little synopsis of the entire book, sort of what the 5 habits. And this week we're going to dive into habit 2. So habit 2 is understand. So let's give a little bit of background, a little bit of a refresher. If you missed the first podcast, like we talked a little bit about all the different habits and why they're important. Why is understand so important in your mind, and where did that come from? Where did the concept of understand be so critical?
Oh, where did it come from? Yes. So once we identified problems, like people are generally to be fairly good at identifying problems, and the thing is that if you don't understand them, they don't go away. Okay, because if you don't understand your problem, you can't actually solve it or solve it effectively. So where did this habit come from was that when I did my original brainstorm, my original brainstorm of over 100 problems my career as being a reliability engineer, there was a whole heap of problems that I personally encountered that formed a group called that I didn't understand something. Okay, so that we've made decisions to move forward on something that we didn't necessarily understand what was going on. Okay, we may have used gut feel, we may have used experience, we may have used something we found on the internet, dare I say it, and moved forward with a decision and found out it was the wrong one for us.
Yeah.
So we didn't understand the problem in relation to us. Now, if you don't understand a problem, how can you solve it? Now, I've been on the receiving end of, and it's one of the stories in the book, of a fairly large problem that we thought we understood. Okay, we didn't use any sort of problem-solving process, but we thought we understood it, and the problem kept on reoccurring. Okay. To the point where we lost a whole facility because all the things broke for all the same reason at the same time, which was great.
Yeah.
And guess which little black duck happened to be working there at the time, and yes. So for me, the value of understanding really, I've suffered pain as a result of this in my career. Companies certainly suffered pain that I've worked for by not understanding things, and I've seen it, and I've seen it in my role now. You've seen it in what you do with us, where people don't actually understand the problem, and they go and implement solutions, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it
doesn't work, and so they suffer the pain again.
Yes, yeah, that's
what this is all about, and that's one of the habits. This is what ended up in the book. It's a core habit that a reliability engineer has, is understanding problems.
Yep. Yeah, I can concur and agree wholeheartedly. And you could nearly wrap it up there.
Yeah, we can really wrap it up there. That's it. But
we won't though.
Podcast.
Yeah,
it's the shortest one.
I think it is very, very key, and in other fields and other areas that I've operated and worked in and pay attention to, like we've talked about before. I also teach yoga. It's very much a passion of mine, and I always would say to students, you've got to understand why your body feels the way it does before you can rectify the problem, and I believe it's the same in all industry, all environments, whether you're operating in maintenance side of things, or you're operating in production, whether it's operating in factories or machinery. It doesn't necessarily matter. I think if you're responsible for a reliability factor in a business, and making sure that something is reliable and it turns up and it shows up and it operates and it works as it should, then understanding any particular problem is a really key point. And I think you hit on the nail on the head when you said you've suffered experiences. I know I've suffered experiences where we don't completely understand when we jump to a conclusion, or we sort of go off what we think, or as you and I have discussed in other podcasts, there's been recent instances that we've seen where, well, that's what we've done for 30 years. That's what we always did to fix it.
That's what we always did.
So what do you mean? That's what we always do.
Always do. That's what we always do. And that was the thing that I suffered when this particular event happened. And it's one of these. What I'm talking about is something that I'll probably never forget for the rest of my life. Like, it was that big, and it came back to what you just said. Oh, we've always done it this way. Right.
And I think one really interesting point that just came to my mind there is that sometimes as the reliability engineer or the maintenance manager or whatever your role is, as we discussed last week, that reliability might fall in. It's not every site has reliability engineers. You might be an asset manager, you might be a production manager that just has to look after that section. In some situations, we actually have to have the courage to stand up and go, well, it didn't work. Let's do something different.
Yes.
And you may get slandered, you may get shamed, you may get dragged across the coals because they think you're off with the fairies and you need a tinfoil hat. However, standing your ground and actually going, well, let's just think about it.
Yeah. And it comes back to the name of the book too there, Dane, because the whole idea of this is, as a reliability engineer, it's a core skill. Like, understanding stuff is a core skill. It's a habit. This is what we do. But I would challenge others listening to this. It's not just you, as you've just alluded to. It's the people that you work with. Right? And if there was a way to corporatize this, I'm going to use that word. Okay, you corporatize the habit or embed or make sure it happens. Rightio. Hopefully, I'm going down the right path here. I don't want to disturb where you were going. No. There's a few little tips and tricks in the book, but I'll let you know. One is have some rules around it. Now, I don't want to stifle innovation or anything like that by putting rules in. Okay, I don't mean that. What I mean is put rules in to trigger this habit. Trigger the change in behavior or the decision-making process or the thought patterns, whatever you want to call it, okay, and influence people's behavior down a different path. Okay? And that different path, okay, is let's use some tools, some helpful tools to help us understand this problem.
Yes.
And trigger the action to go that way. Like have some rules to say, hey, this problem's gone from this size up to this size. Now we need an RCA or a 5 Ys or something like that. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Even a workshopping or a brainstorming session to discuss whatever it be. I think that's totally right. I totally agree with you. I think it's very important that we do start to ask those questions. So we start to have things in our organization or a business to actually trigger that. And I think when you actually, like leveraging from that point of having the courage to actually stand up and say, hey, we need to do something different, or why has this happened? Let's actually have a look. Let's really understand the problem. And I know in smaller organizations, you being one person might stand up to people and they might go, oh, look, this is just how we fix it. This is just how it happens. Don't worry about it. And it might take a little bit of extra effort to actually go back and say, hey, now that we've fixed it, now that we've done that, the way that we've always done it, let's just go back and have a look and try and understand why anyway.
Yeah.
Because it might happen again. It might not. And if you start to do that, then you can start to build in these triggers, as you say, or these little occurrences that say, well, in situation X, then we will do Y. Just to understand. And if it's just understanding what the problem is, then that's a win. That's certainly a step forward. So what are some of the key ways? And I know you mentioned one just then before, is in doing RCAs, doing 5 whys, doing workshopping, brainstorming events. What other tools or methods maybe let's talk about, obviously, if you're in a big organization, and it's a big incident, they're going to have a formalized process. It's likely to be an ICAM investigation, an RCA, some sort of problem-solving tool that the organization will use.
Yeah.
But what if you're not? What if you're the sole man trying to find the courage now to actually step up and say, hey, let's do things differently? What are some simple steps or things that you might talk about in the book that you could put in your tool bag? What are some of those little tools to use?
Yes. Most people start out with the 5 whys if they haven't got anything. In fact, I was talking to some engineers today, and their language was, we'll have to do a 5 whys on that. So, and without going into the detail of their particular 5 whys, there's a whole heap of things, but you ask why 5 times.
Yep.
Okay. And everyone probably knows I'm a big fan of Rod Moore and his philosophies and ways of doing things. And for each of those answers to the why, you have a countermeasure. So in other words, what am I going to do about what I've discovered by asking why? So you have 5 answers to the 5 whys because you ask why 5 times. You also have 5 things that I'm going to do differently as a result of that. Okay, so that's a 5 whys. Now there's like in the book, go into a little bit more detail on how to do that and some examples on what to do. Okay, but as you said, Dane, there is a plethora of formal problem-solving methods around the world. Okay, some tailored for safety incidences, some are more generic, like the 5 whys. In the camp, I've had my experience. I've used certain tools over the life because I'm a reliability engineer. But it doesn't really matter which tool you use. So whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you, and it's solving problems. And and the reason why it's working is the problem goes away and doesn't come back again. Yep. So that's my philosophy. Don't really mind which tool you use. I've got some favorites, but essentially you use some sort of formal problem-solving process. Like in my experience with manufacturing, they tend to use Fishbones, Ichigawas. People that have trained in Lean will tend to use different things. KT use their own. They've got their own developed one. It's been around since the 60s, all that sort of stuff. If it's been around since the 60s, it obviously works. So there's a plethora of different tools, and my suggestion is find the one that works for you.
Yeah, I think one thing to add to that, and if you are uncertain, unsure, and you want to just have a crack at something, my only tip would be make sure it's documented, make sure it's noted down and saved somewhere.
Yep.
Whether it's on your own iPad, tablet, whatever, whether it's on your computer or just even in a folder. Even if you get a simple notebook and you write it down and you keep it there and you go, here's my problem solving book. So, every time we go to it, like if you're a small operation and you're just doing your own thing, it's just take a note, because there's a lot to be actually said for the physical act of writing or even typing things down, but actually transmitting it from actually just thinking about it and going, okay, I did that, compared to actually putting it out there, writing it down. It actually is a process of taking it from your own brain and putting it somewhere else so that you don't need to remember it, and then it can be remembered by all, and it allows space for more to be understood.
Yes. I'm a bit of a fan of because Dane knows electronic ways of doing things.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because I've found, like personally, now keep in mind that, I'm not the youngest person in the room anymore. I started learning to write on pencil and paper without any sort of electronic devices whatsoever. I actually find, now this is really interesting, that if I lose focus for whatever reason, because I'm doing a lot of typing, which is a lot of what I do, I actually switch modes into writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that writing piece actually helps me focus down. So, it doesn't have to be on a piece of pen and paper, as in physical paper. For me, it works electronically.
Mm-hmm.
But getting it, and tools like Microsoft's OneNote, and with Microsoft Teams, you can share stuff, and and the beauty of it is that most modern computer systems now can actually do text recognition, even though it's handwritten.
Yes.
And reasonably accurately. I know in the past it was pretty hit and miss, but these days it's pretty darn good. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Is if you get it documented, but not to the point where you're writing a formal report or anything like that, but just noted. Just noted.
One of my favorite things to do, and even though you're slightly older than me, Seven, I actually agree wholeheartedly. I was often the one that would probably chew through too much paper because I'd go and print things out and I'd scribble all over them, I'd draw on them, and physically write on paper. And it's the same thing. I could sit at a computer for hours, but it's like if I wrote it on paper or on a whiteboard in one of my old corporate roles, if I had to brainstorm, I had a whiteboard behind me. And it was one of those computer ones that you could actually print out what was on the board.
Yeah.
And I would just start scribbling. And it'd be just like mind mapping and things going everywhere. And people would go, what's that? Oh, hang on. These are like my thoughts. But it's the same when we're trying to understand a problem. If you actually write them out, you can physically see them appearing in different spaces. And like I said, just cognitively gives you that little bit of space within your mind, within your head, to actually think outside of that box, maybe get another perspective.
Yes.
And put a visual.
And get another perspective. So if it's in the somebody was telling me, I was saying, if it's in your head, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
Yeah, and it only starts to exist when you get it out of your head into the physical world. Yeah, and you've seen me with a whiteboard. You've seen me with a whiteboard too. I love more whiteboards. And the thing is, as a reliability engineer, and we've talked about this in some of the training that we run, there's two sets of skills that a reliability engineer or a problem solver needs, right? So reliability engineers were problem solvers.
Yep.
Okay. It's facilitation skills.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that in habit 5. And the technical skills. And they've got a balance, right?
Yes.
So, you don't want to be any of these things. You want to have that balance between the technical skills and the facilitation skills, or the people skills. I've been known to call it the hard skills and the soft skills.
Yes. And like we talked about last week, and it's so timely that you brought that up at this when you did, because my thought process was literally going into communication and facilitation and understanding. Because as a reliability engineer, part of your role is to express what the problem is. A lot of people, if something breaks down and you're the one in control of it, or you're the one that's meant to be responsible for it to some extent, whether you're the asset manager, production manager, whatever, they're going to go, what happened? Why did that happen? What went wrong? And you've got to be able to articulate that. Concisely. And so actually taking the time to understand the problem is really important, because then you can concisely and succinctly deliver an explanation.
Yeah.
with confidence.
With confidence, and it's really interesting. Just to add to this, because there was a really interesting problem that I was working on. Right, so this problem involved the whole organisation. It involved the production people, it involved the maintenance people, and it happened this year. Right?
Yep.
Now, the maintenance people did not realise that it took the production people 1 week to get the system stabilised after this problem had occurred.
Wow.
So the problem had occurred. The maintenance guys fixed it, right, within days.
Yep.
Because the problem had affected certain parts of their production system.
Yep.
It took the production people a week to get what they called system stability back. And then when we talked about this when we're doing a formal problem solving process, when we were talking about this, the maintenance guys go, really? Like, no one we fix it, box it up, and we go and fix the next problem. And they were totally, I'm going to use the word ignorant. It might be a bit harsh, but they were totally ignorant to the problem. And then, when we were talking about the problem, what effect it had on everyone else, like the production goes, it took us a week to get the system stability back, and the maintenance guys go, oh, wow. Oh, this is bigger than what we thought.
Yeah. And I think that's a really key point, because understanding and how it relates to that understanding is that you need to understand the whole ramifications of the problem.
Yes.
Because far too often it's like, oh, go and fix that. Okay. I go and fix it. Oh, maintenance team come in and go, oh, yep, this is wrong. We'll fix it up, box up, away it goes. Don't worry about it. My job's done, and I forget about it. When we come back to it, though, like you said, the production team have to actually go, well, this actually has a run-on effect down here and causes this, and this, and therefore we're out by a week and we need to do all that. It's like, oh, okay. So then that creates a little bit more leverage for the maintenance team to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yes.
Because if they've had a bad day, it's been Friday when they've gone sent out to fix it, and it's 3 o'clock and it's beer o'clock, as we do here in Australia regularly. Maybe they just kind of rushed the process, didn't take as much care maybe as usual. And look, I'm not laying blame or anything else on anyone in that situation. It's more so just that here's a reality that if there was the understanding of what that whole ramification was of that failure, maybe a little bit extra care would have been taken in the process to ensure it didn't happen again. And that's where the reliability's role in communicating clearly up, down, and around, and making sure that they do, as you said, facilitate, as we will talk about in Habit 5, the problem to everyone, being able to communicate that. And like I mentioned before, with clarity and confidence, I think is a really key point.
Absolutely. And that's part of understanding the problem too. So it's exercising habit too.
Yeah.
How big was the problem?
Exactly. So at the moment, I'm drawing a blank on anything else to ask you about understanding, but is there anything, I feel like we summarized it quite well in the beginning. We've talked around about, the importance of it and some key sort of factors into why it's really important to understand. But is there anything else that you would like to highlight about understanding as being a critical point? Or
I can.
Yes, go.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. It's really easy to avoid doing it. Right? Because it really is, the easy path is to actually just apply a fix, to keep on doing what you've always done. Now, if you go, we've been here before, that's the trigger to actually do it. Now, to do habit 2, which is understand. Now, Ron Moore talks about a bow wave. You make a small investment to get a big gain.
Yep.
And you keep on making. This is an example of it. You make a small investment in a bit of problem solving to make a big gain. Okay.
Yep.
So if this problem has happened 4 times before in the past, you know how often it's going to occur. If you don't make this investment, you know that you're going to continue suffering that problem into the future because it's happened before in the past. By making this investment, you make that problem go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to totally agree. I think it is very important that we do it. That you do take the time to understand. I would even argue that is why some people would often get frustrated with me, because I took time to understand in the problem. And that's where even if you get a little bit of pushback, take the time. And it might mean that you need to do a little bit on your own in your own time. Like if it is that you're in an environment where people are pushing back and just wanting to fix it, like I mentioned before, okay, go and make the fix. Do what they've always done. But maybe commit a little bit of your own time to dive a little deeper, to understand a little more. And sometimes you'll find it doesn't actually take that long to do.
Yeah, have a little bit of quiet time, as we say.
A little bit of quiet
time. Yes, I need a little bit of
stillness.
Yeah. And try and get out. I'll be the first to admit that it's really, really hard to get out of like the everyday, as in production bustle, problems, constant things popping up, people asking questions, all that sort of stuff, and finding that little bit of quiet time to get your headspace to do this is certainly worth it. Not just from an outcome point of view and business point of view, also from a personal point of view. Allows you to clarify your thinking and get your thoughts straight and in the right direction. I think Covey talks about climbing ladders, and you want to make sure that your ladder is against the right wall. Now, so just take a little bit of time, make sure your ladder is against the right wall, because if you haven't got your ladder against the right wall, you're climbing up it, and you're not going to get anywhere.
Yes. Yeah. Would totally agree. Awesome. Well, I think we've wrapped up habit 2 in understanding, and next week we will dive into habit 3, which will be nice and fun. And look, Seven, thank you again for showing up and always sharing your thoughts. If anyone has any questions, any queries, any inputs, certainly hit us up, add comments, send us messages and so forth. Follow up with us and let us know what your thoughts and feelings are on this. And if it's been helpful, as always, smash the like button, subscribe, do your usual things. And if you have anything else that you think you'd like to hear from us about, any particular subject matters in the near future, let us know too, because we'll be happy to chat about them and just give our views. Remember, these are our views and opinions. That's just from our own experience. But we hope that they've been helpful. And thanks again, Seven.
No worries, mate. Thank you.